NFL Week 5 is here, and you're watching the 4 Ps, parlays, player props, and predictions. Today, I got an anytime touchdown parlay, which we cashed last week, plus a bunch of other player props that I love for Sunday's NFL slate. If you are new, my name's Austin from Calling Our Shot. Of course, we always dive into how we did the previous day betting some NFL, and it was on Thursday. We went 1-2. Not a great day for us. In terms of our ladder challenge, we did hit that. Day 3 cash, so we'll have day 4 on Sunday. Our other 2 straight bets lost. Kirk Cousins under 1.5 passing touchdowns. Might have been Dono of the year. I'd rather lose like that than him just end up with the second one with like a minute left. And then Baker Mayfield did not throw a pick. He almost did on the third play of the game, but obviously we did not come through. That was just a half unit play. So only down a half unit, but let's have a dominant Sunday. And I'm confident it starts in this video. Now, this is not the only video we post for NFL Sundays. We have a couple other ones. The first one was already posted earlier this week. It was me and Logan going through every single game on Sunday, giving you our favorite spread, money line, or total. It's a pretty cool video. We've got a really good track record on them. I encourage you to check it out. I'll link it down below in the pinned comment in the description. Our second video, if you love unders, and I don't love unders, but they've been printing for us this season, 11-3. You can check out our under video where we talk about a bunch of unders. That video is posted at 5 p.m. Eastern time Saturday evening. So after this video drops, but might be live by the time you're watching this, I'll link that down below in the pinned comment if you want to tap into that. But you guys came for some NFL picks. Let's dive in. The first one we're going to start with is the free square on Dak Prescott on Underdog Fantasy for him to get 1 yard on Sunday Night Football. We talk about Underdog all the time. Last week in this exact video, we started with, we had an Underdog Fantasy entry, and what happened? It smacked. It's right on the screen. This was from last week. We have another one at the end of this video going for back-to-back, trying to make you guys some money. And the best part is if you sign up using our code COS or the link in the description, they'll match your first deposit up to $1,000, and they'll give you this Dak Prescott free square for 1 yard. Sounds good? Take advantage of that. Details down below. Last week, we started with an anytime touchdown parlay, and wouldn't you know, it cashed with James Conner, Mike Evans, and Alvin Kamara all coming through. And it feels right that we start this week with another one. Here we go. Put them up on the screen. These 3 guys are getting into the end zone on Sunday. Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens, Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Najee Harris take us home Sunday Night Football of the Pittsburgh Steelers, plus 763, all of them to get in the end zone on DraftKings. Now, I don't need to give you a sell job on Derrick Henry. He's obviously the goal line back for the Ravens. Brian Thomas, very underrated. I think he has a massive day. I have a prop on him, not in this video, actually in the other video. Not necessarily fading him. It's a little bit weird. You'll see that in that other video. And then Najee Harris, I think he can get us one in the end zone. No Jalen Warren. We know he's going to get those goal line touches. I think this is a good chance of going back to back. Plus 763. Just sprinkle on it if you want to, or cash. And we've cashed 2 of our 4 long shots so far this season in terms of either money lines or anytime touchdowns. Let's make that 3 of 5. Tap into that. Derrick Henry, Brian Thomas Jr., and Najee Harris. But let's dive into the straight bets. Here we go. First one. Just like last week, we started with a running back and we laddered him up. This is going to be another one. Josh Jacobs, give me his over 62.5 rushing yards, minus 114 on FanDuel for 1 unit. And then also a slight sprinkle, just a quarter unit on him to get 80 plus rushing yards at plus 200. Now, you could also ladder him up to 90 or 100, just like we did with James Conner last week. We took his over at like 67.5, and then we did the 100 plus for plus 330. I just don't see a ton of value. I mean, I think he could go up to 100 plus. They just play their backup a lot more. Whereas think about James Conner, he's basically gets all the running back carries for the Cardinals. Josh Jacobs is going to see Emmanuel Wilson steal some of his work. Now, obviously, if you want to take it, you can. And I'm not going to be mad if Josh Jacobs goes for 100 because I'll have already cashed his 1 unit and I'll already have cashed the plus 200. I just like this a little bit better than asking him to go over the 100 or century mark. Now, so far this season, Jacobs is over in 2 of 4 games. In week 1, he had 84 yards against the Eagles. And then in week 2, 151 and 43 and 51. These last 2 games have been pretty bad for him. We saw last week 9 rushing attempts compared to 54 pass attempts for Jordan Love. Now, obviously, it's going to be skewed that way when you find yourselves down 28-0. But you can't imagine that the Packers want to have that exact same, obviously, game script. We can't control that. If they get down 28-0, they're going to throw a lot. But they're going to probably try to establish the run early in this contest. And it makes sense against a very good matchup at running the football. Last week against the Vikings really good at stopping the run. This one, a very good matchup. The Rams allowing 5 yards per carry, 5th worst in the NFL. Been a rushing defense that's really struggled. Still trying to find a replacement. I don't think you can. For Aaron Donald, good luck doing that. But we've seen running backs feast on them. We saw David Montgomery in week 1, 17 for 91. His teammate, Jahmyr Gibbs, only had like 11 for 40. James Conner, hey, speak of the devil, 21 for 122. We saw Jordan Mason, 19 for 77. And then DeAndre Swift, the guy that was literally a corpse of himself. He had sucked all season long. People were hammering his unders. Last week, 16 for 93. I think that goes to show you how bad this rushing defense has been. I think we could see Jacobs get upwards of 15 touches here. If he gets over 15, 20 touches like he maybe did in week 2, he could easily soar over this line. I'm not saying he gets, 25 carries here. I don't see him doing that, but this guy that's ran the ball pretty well. Obviously, he wasn't great with the Raiders last year, but his offensive line sucked then. The Packers' offensive line is pretty solid. I think we see him get some touches early in this game. If they lead, I think we see him get even more. I think he could do it on limited touches. If it's, hey, we only get 12 to 14 carries, you need to break off a big one. He's shown the ability to do that. I like Josh Jacobs, though, a lot on Sunday. So give me his over regular 62.5 for just one unit. And then I'll take a little bit of a sprinkle. Nothing too crazy, just a quarter unit on the 80 plus, which is plus 200 on DraftKings. But I like Josh Jacobs in a big way. My next 3 plays that will wrap up the video will all be pass catchers. And the first one starts on an early Sunday at 9:30 a.m. kickoff in London. So if you're watching this after this one starts, I pray that he's doing a big job and making it look smart. It's Garrett Wilson. Give me his over 52.5 receiving yards, minus 114 on FanDuel. Now, I almost made this bigger play. I really like Garrett Wilson. And I honestly noticed that there's not a lot of value laddering up receivers for the most part. Like, sure, I could take him for 70 to 80 receiving yards, but when you look at that, not a ton of value out there. I mean, you're getting plus 180 for like 70 yards, whereas for Josh Jacobs, we got, I guess plus 200. Maybe rush yards, I feel like, are a little bit easier to get than receiving, but you get what my point. Now, like I said, it's a 9:30 a.m. kickoff in London. Now, so far, if you look at Minnesota, what they're really good at, stopping the run. We just talked about that with Josh Jacobs, 3rd fewest rushing yards per attempt. But in the flip side, they're not great at defending the secondary, and they give up a lot of yards. And they also blitz a ton, so you're getting a lot of man-on-man coverage. Now, if you talk about Garrett Wilson, has he been a great start to his season? No. He did go over in his first 2 games with 60 and 57 yards. The last 2, 33 and 41. So obviously still getting on the board. It's not like he's getting shut out. But really tough matchups. He faced Christian Gonzalez and Pat Surtain II. Obviously, those are 2 of the most elite corners in the league. Now you get a much more advantageous matchup against the Vikings, a team that, like I said, blitz a ton. And when they're blitzing, that obviously means you don't have as many guys in coverage. And if you're going one-on-one, I'm pretty confident Rodgers is going to look for probably his best wide receiver at getting open, and that is Garrett Wilson. What we've seen so far this season, Minnesota allows the most passing yards in the NFL, and we've seen that obviously lead to big days from wide receivers. Malik Neighbors had 66 in week 1. Then Debo, 110 in week 2. Then the trio of Texans wide receivers all went over this line. And then last week, we saw Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed both go over this line as well. Look, I think this is a good spot for Garrett Wilson to bounce back. I think he could easily get into the 70, 80, even maybe 100 yards. That wouldn't shock me a ton. A little bit scared because there could be some rain in this game out in London. Either way, I think they're going to blitz a ton. They're not going to change their offensive or defensive scheme. They're going to blitz. And when they blitz, I think you'll see Garrett Wilson getting open. And all it takes is them to break one tackle, and he could be off to the races. We know he's had that ability. Hasn't really shown it so much this season. Him and Rodgers still don't look to be 100% on page. I think eventually that changes. And if you're trying to buy low in fantasy, it feels like Garrett Wilson might be the best buy low candidate right now for wide receivers. I love his over. My 3rd play in this video will be another over for a pass catcher. And it's a guy that we cashed out last week with. He's running it back. T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals, over 49.5 receiving yards, minus 120 on Bet365. This is the same thing as taking his 50 plus. I also like his regular lineup to about 53.5, depending on if it changes. Now, welcome back to Mr. Higgins. Like I said, last week we took his prop against the Panthers. Pretty sure he cashed in the first half. He had 6 for 60. Didn't do a whole lot in the second half. They were mostly running as they were up by 2 touchdowns most of that game. This is not going to be a spot for the Bengals offense to run the football. The Ravens this season allowing the fewest rushing yards per attempt. And the books know that because they've jumped Joe Burrow's pass attempts line 35.5. You know how often you see a 35.5 pass attempts line? Not all too often that guys are that high. So they expect Joe Burrow to be slinging it around, and so do I. And I think obviously Jamar Chase will do his thing, but T. Higgins, we know he's going to play a lot of snaps, and he's going to be needed outside of Jamar Chase, who I wouldn't be shocked if the Ravens are paying a lot of attention to him. T has also played really well versus Baltimore. In his last 4 games versus them, he's at 62, 194, 7, and 89 receiving yards. Now, if you go to StatMuse and type in his game log, you'll see one game where he actually had 0 that I'm excluding. I think he played 3 snaps there. If you think T. Higgins plays 3 snaps, then please just hammer all of his unders. But that one game that he had 7, He had 7 targets, actually, just only caught one of them for 7 yards. So obviously him and Joe Burrow were not on the same page. But look at this Ravens secondary. It has not been great this season. They've been better last week against the Bills, but outside of that week, they've been struggling, and their best corner guy is Marlon Humphrey. He's likely to follow around Jamar Chase, and they'll probably give some extra coverage towards Jamar Chase because you obviously don't want their number one guy to expose you. But with a secondary guy like T. Higgins is not doubling him, I think you'll get plenty of opportunities where we've seen Joe Burrow be like, you know what? T. Higgins in one-on-one coverage, I'll take my chances there for a big play because we know T has the ability to go down there and make those plays. Last week, he had one into double coverage. He made the catch. He just happened to be out of bounds. But we've seen wide receivers have decent success versus the Ravens. Last week, both Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman both hit this over. You had the week before that, CD, Tolbert, and Turpin all had 40+, with 2 of those guys going over. And then Devontae Adams the week before had 110. I don't think this is a huge day for Jamar Chase. I think he's still can have a big day. But I think T. Higgins, if Jamar Chase is going off in the first half, better believe they'll make some changes in the second half. Maybe that's when T. Higgins starts to get involved. I think he sees a couple 50-50 balls. Hopefully he brings them down. I just think this is too good of a matchup here. So I'll back T. Higgins once again. I still think the line's too low for him. This is a guy last year we were used to seeing in the 65s. Still giving us a little bit of a discount on what should be a very pass-happy Bengals offense on Sunday. Give me T. Higgins. Give me his over 49.5 receiving yards. And then my fourth and final play in this video before we get to an Underdog fantasy entry is a tight end. And it's a guy I love. And his name is Brock Bowers. I love his over 43.5 receiving yards, -110 on Bet365. Now, I'd play this about 46.5. I went back and forth on Brock Bowers' receptions or receiving yards. If his receptions was 3.5, I probably would have taken that. But obviously, he's at 4.5. A number that he has had 3 and 2 the last 2 games. So we're sitting at the 4.5. What the heck are we doing here? I think this is a chance Brock Bowers could potentially get 6, 7, 8 receptions. He could climb that ladder. I'm going to take the receiving yards because if he's getting that, better get these receiving yards for us. Now, why do I like Brock Bowers in a big way? Well, Brock Bowers started this season hot. Everyone was like, dang, tight ends are sucking, except for this rookie tight end out of Georgia. He had 58 and 98 receiving yards first 2 weeks. Third game, only 41 yards. Okay. The fourth game against the Browns, which should be on paper a good matchup, 19. Now we get a much better game script and a much better game matchup for him because you talk about the Broncos. They blitz at the highest rate in the league, 44%. And they also have a star cornerback, Pat Surtain II, who's going to shut down one of these Raiders pass catchers. And it's not going to be Brock Bowers. Could it be Trey Tucker? Could it be Jacoby Myers? I don't care. Is it going to be Devontae Adams? Heck no, he ain't playing. He's going to be on his hamstring injury, aka he's just waiting to get traded. We'll see where he goes. But I think this is going to be a good spot for Brock Bowers to line up in his slot or line up on that tight end and just do some curl routes, do some out routes. And for Gardner Minshew, just be hiking it, getting pressured by the blitz, boom, hitting Brock Bowers, maybe he breaks the tackle and it goes up the field for 25 yards. Wouldn't shock me at all. We've seen tight ends have a lot of receptions against the Broncos, just not a lot of yards. Here's what I mean. The last 3 weeks, a tight end has had 4 or more receptions against this defense, the Broncos. The problem was they haven't faced a lot of talent at the position. Pat Freiermuth and Justin Fields connected for 39 yards. You had Cade Otton, he had 7 for 47, but they don't throw him far down the field. And Tyler Conklin had 4 for 17 in a very rainy game. All those guys, in my opinion, are not as good as Brock Bowers. And what they also don't have is his ability to break tackles and the yards after the catch. I think that's where Bowers flourishes on Sunday. I think he gets a couple catches that might be only a 3-yard catch. Maybe he breaks a tackle, gets up the field 10, 15 yards, or maybe he keeps going. I think it's a beautiful spot to back Brock Bowers. You think about last week, people got into his early line with Devontae Adams still playing, supposedly, at 39.5. Once Devontae Adams got ruled out, his line jumped into the mid-60s. We're talking 61.5. And what did he do? He laid an egg. Now, obviously, some guys are going to lay eggs, but what happened? The line got dropped 18 to 20 yards. I mean, heck, we got to take a stab there. I think this is a good spot for Brock Bowers and a good matchup for one that might be underrated. He just burned people last week. I don't think he burns them this week. I think the only people he's burning are going to be some secondary, maybe safeties or some linebackers from the Denver Broncos. Give me Brock Bowers over in receiving yards. That's going to wrap up my 4 props in this video. I'll throw them all into an Underdog fantasy entry. So you see on here, we cashed last week. We're going to try to cash another one this week. Brock, Josh. I switched Garrett Wilson to receptions. Obviously a little bit more juice, but I think he gets the 5 receptions. And T. Higgins, 51.5 receiving yards. If Garrett Wilson isn't coming through, put the other 3 into your entries. A reminder, make sure you sign up using our code COS, and they'll match your first deposit up to $1,000, a 50% match. And they'll also give you the Dak Prescott free square. All those details down below. If you want to go check out our other videos, I will link Number one on the top of the screen will be our best bets, where we're talking about our favorite spread, money line totals, and all the games. We've had a really good track record there. I encourage you to go tap into that video. The second one, which won't be live until 5 p.m. Saturday evening, will be our fades, our unders that we really like. Like I said, 11-3 on unders so far this season. Really good track record there. And then once day 4 of our ladder challenge is live, which probably won't be live until Sunday, sometime morning time, I'll link it over here. Have a wonderful Sunday. Good luck on all your picks. Go check out the other videos. It would certainly appreciate it. Sign up for Underdog using our code COS. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.